Welcome, SunSpotter. Are you ready for relevant news, reports, information, and a splash of entertaining ideas based on real estate? You have arrived in a great space. Here is C. Chambers, licensed real estate sales and content creator, helping you with the keys to open doors of new opportunities. And now, let's go get them, C.
Great day and wellness, SunSpotters. This is C. Chambers, and yes, it's fair game and the F.A.R.E Act is upon us. It struck into law about 170 days ago. It will be totally in effect by June 11th of this year, 2025, bar any other litigation that's going on, right? So it goes full speed ahead, and it will, as far as what everybody's talking, and there's no rumor mill anymore. This is solid black and white facts, data that we need to contend with. But the controversy goes with, is it going to be just a home run for the tenants? Where do the landlords, what will they do? Will they bake in the broker's fee costs inside of the rent for a certain amount of time? Will they disclose their listings or pocket them? Basically trying to screen who will be able to get to those listings. Also, the brokers and agents, how will they basically adjust so they can be compensated for the work that they do when they are hired? And how it goes right now is that the landlord gets the broker, the landlord pays the broker. That's basically OP. If the tenant gets the broker or agent, the tenant pays. And still, when the landlord want to drive an incentive, they can pay the tenant's broker and agent. But here's where it stops and changes. The tenant is not obligated to pay the landlord's broker or agent. So let's get into what has been done, where the discrepancies may be with this city council report. Okay, this was done December 14th. So this was from middle of last year till the end of last year. This is when the battles was going on, and we're going to see why it took so long as well. Let's go through it. The F.A.R.E Act becomes law, reforming broker fees to help working class New Yorkers afford housing, right? Here's where it gets interesting. There's some wording here that's very, very key. The law is enacted after Mayor Eric Adams' inaction and baffling rhetorical opposition after his administration negotiated a support bill. So there was a time where he was supporting it. Like, this sounds like a good move. This was actually a bill that was brought up by Chiasi, and a congressman, and very adamant. He got the backing of Kathy Hochul. We know there has been some interesting things happening in Mayor Adams' life, and a lot of things were topsy-turvy, and he switched his position, right? And that caused him to do an inaction towards the bill getting into law. But like I said, she actually had the backing of a lot of people in the city council, and as well as the tenants, a lot of tenant advocacy groups, because you can understand, look, you pay an exorbitant amount of money just to get into a place that, technically you can barely get to, and on top of that, it's moving fees. It's just a large lump sum. It's almost a small fortune that you have to pay just to move in. And he struck the chord with the tenant advocacies groups, a lot of other council members, and got the ear of Governor Kathy Hochul. It's called the Introduction 360A, right? Known as the F.A.R.E Act, became law as a result of the mayor taking no action within 30 days of its passage. So he still was in a neutral sense. I'll just let it go. It doesn't need me. Or it could be other things. Who knows? But he did switch his side from being pretty cool with it to opposing it. The new law, which will take effect in 180 days after becoming law, this June 11th, okay, of its passage. The new law, which will take effect, okay, prohibits landlords from passing fees of brokers they hire onto prospective tenants. So the landlord hires the broker to, hey, find somebody for this unit I have vacant. You know, nobody likes vacancies. It just keeps it's like a placeholder. Nobody can, do anything with. You want to try to generate some income, generate some money. So you might give an incentive. That's what I was talking about when the landlord would pay the tenant's broker and agent. And then you might have where the landlord hires a broker, find something for me, find somebody that can come into this place, and that's how you will get a listing. Well, it's no more passing the fees off to the tenant to say, well, because you want to get inside, you want to get into this place, you're going to have to pay it. No. Landlord pays the broker he hires, and the tenant pays the broker and agent they hire. All right? It brings greater fairness to New York City's rental housing market for prospective tenants, often burdened with nearly $13,000 in upfront costs. That is major, including thousands of dollars in broker fees, even when they did not request the services. And that was an unfair practice. That's why hence the name FAIR, right? But brokers do more than just, when I say brokers and agents, usually agents out in the field. And, brokers is willing, they'll make sure that, there's these guidelines being followed. So you don't run into a shady agent. And, a shady broker that's with a landlord there in cahoots and all this melee stuff. We try to sift through all of that and just be above board. So this does bring a lot of transparency to the picture, and people just need to know how to work well and work better, and in cooperation with what the mission is. Right? Here's the reason. Mayor Adams declined to sign the bill into law and began voicing last-minute opposition before its passage. They blamed the real estate lobby, in good respects. People are concerned about the work that they put out. Will they be duly compensated? And what I've been learning now is basically you want to track down everything you've done, from the substantive contact when we first meet to the appointments to the actual viewings. You want to make sure that you have all these things listed out and not like an itemized invoice. So you're able to talk to the client and you're about to get the keys and sign the lease and everything. You want to be able to say, here is all the things that we've done up to now. It's only right to have a tenant representative compensation value. And this is my value right here, right? And not just all day opening doors and closing them and locking them and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that go on. Okay? The council continues to take action, which makes housing in our city more affordable to New Yorkers so they can remain in our communities. This is the Speaker, Adrian Adams. The council is consistent in our focus on improving the lives of working and middle-class families, this is great, and New Yorkers deserve a city government that will prioritize their needs, not undermine them. So there you have it in a nutshell, what direction that the council was going for. It's for the working class person. It's for those people that maybe I heard the story during during that whole session of a student that came into somebody. She was about to start a job, but she had to save up 6 to 8 months just so she can pay off the first month rent and the broker's fee. Because she had the security deposit already. Basically all the same price. But it was such a chore, and it's hard to save when you constantly have expenses going. So, that was a riveting testimony, and it did move a lot of people in the building, and then realtors stepped up and these services that we do cost, and especially with a lot of moving wheels, because people in the landlord side were reluctant to give off listings, and they would like a lot of off-market stuff, and also keep things close to their pocket, the exclusives. So you show somebody that and they're kind of slow on the trigger, you might be losing business on the side, so there's a lot of that going on. Let's go down a little longer. We'll see what Asi said. Okay? After too many decades under an unfair and suffocating system, New Yorkers can be free from the it wasn't forced broker fees. It's usually something that you can actually negotiate. But, upfront and transparent agents and brokers will tell you that. Once this new law takes effect in June 2025, said Councilmember Chiasi, the era of the captive tenant may finally be over. That's some tough wording there. This win belongs to all of us, but we must ensure that the mayor's administration adequately implements and enforces the law. After his puzzling last-minute statements that contradicted the work of the administration in negotiation to support it. See, it shows you the discrepancy between the mayor's administration and the city council. And we're still actually in that realm until a new mayor comes aboard. So, there's a lot of things we got to consider. Let's go to the next, if I may. Hope you can see me and hear me. This is from City Limits. This is an article. Okay, hundreds of tenants and brokers descended on City Hall. That was back in June 2024. And you see the pictures. If you're looking at the screen, yeah, there was a lot of people. It was packed. I was there. And the interesting thing is, I do advocate for the tenants. I do. I mentioned that before. That is something that just did on my heart, because we're actually here to help people, find their next place, their next home, so they can continue a quality standard of living, and be able to contribute to their own lives, but also the New York experience as well. Nobody wants to see everybody move in some type of exodus. And then also, advocate for the agents and the brokers. They have mouths to feed, They're actually busting their tails. You're talking about everything from walk-up flights to some of the most unsightly places. It could be the most richest places, but you're still having to go up. Sometimes you're doing a little, dance, let's say it, a little feisty dance with some landlords and some supers, depending on your level of rapport with people and how you speak to people and how they speak to you as well. It could be an interesting day, where everybody just does the dump truck thing, have a whole bunch of stuff on their shoulders and want to dump it onto you. This is not just basically complain and nothing like that. These are just the realities and the nuances that go into effect. And then you're showing, 10, 20, you're previewing, 8, 10 places a day, That's a lot of work. So, hope people can understand that. And here go the Instagram post from Councilman Chiasi. They wanted to rally for the legislation that would save them from paying rental brokers they do not hire. And that's the key. If you do hire the broker, an agent, if you do hire them, you pay them. That's representative value. Okay? It talks about Preet Holdco, a full-time student and restaurant server from Ridgewood that's moved 5 times in New York City. He's no stranger to brokers. He often encounters after responding to a listing that he finds online. In the story, he said paid upwards to what? $7,000? Yeah, here you go. There was one big apartment building, and I contacted the broker and was like, so can I come see the apartment? And he was like, yeah, the door is open. You must take command. I have issue with that. He recalled, I'm like, oh, you're not going to be there? No, I have issue with that. But, because it's basically a personal service that you're actually, paying for, basically kind of like a concierge, a valet, or, a bar. I like to akin it to a barber. You can do it yourself, right? You might miss some spots. You'll find some blind spots, and you may miss something that can accentuate your experience. The mist of cologne and alcohol, the sharp blade of the razor, straight razor, stuff like that. But only pros know and are equipped with the right tools and also the right techniques, to get you the most for your dollar. That's what we're all here for. That's the marriage right there. So the guy says, no, the door is open. I don't sit well with that. The fee associated with that unit was 12% of 1 year's rent. See, offering that type of money, I'm going to go to the actual place, see it with you, see what you like and what you don't like, see if we can work on something, talk to the, establish a communication with the landlord or management company, and try to make the best possible experience. Paroko decided it wasn't even worth to visit, but his current apartment came with the $2,300 broker fee, part of the $7,000 he owed up front, a big cost. And this is what people are trying to, basically stay away from. The question that came up is whether that money would be baked in somehow further down the line. I don't know. Let's see something else. I do have a report up. My good friends at Oxford. Here it is. All right. This is especially some good information for the agents out there. Right. Major changes taking effect June 11th. As the residential rental transactions are conducted in New York City, fairness in apartment rental expenses. F.A.R.E Act will reshape how brokers' fees are paid. This is a New York City law. It does not affect the way rental transactions are managed in other parts of the state. So this is specifically for the city, the 5 boroughs. The F.A.R.E Act passed in December. Move myself around. There we go. It's being heralded as a means of reducing the tenant's financial obligations when renting an apartment in New York City. Under the new law, whichever party hires the brokerage firm is responsible for paying its fee. Fair, right? In most rental transactions in New York City, it would be the landlord who is responsible to pay the broker's commission. If the listing is provided by the broker, to the broker by the landlord or the managing agent, right? Now, I told you before, the landlord acquires the services of that broker's firm or agent, he pays it. He or she pays it. They pay it. It is irrelevant whether the listing is open or exclusive. In either case, it is the landlord who retains the broker and is responsible to pay the commission. The new law will apply to all lease agreements signed on or after June 11th, and it does not apply to lease renewals or agreements signed before that date. So it's no retroactive stuff. All right. Just wanted you to get a glimpse of what's going on there. Let me see if I can do one more. And we can move on from there. Was a good one I just had. This is the councilman.
Andrew Cuomo led us through COVID, mobilizing a state and delivering hope.
All right, this is the councilman going to talk about the F.A.R.E Act.
A housing fight is taking center stage today in City Hall with landlords on one side and a majority of the city council on the other. A bill making landlords responsible for paying brokers' fees instead of renters is expected to pass this afternoon. But the mayor, well, he says it may end up costing renters more in the long run. Listen.
Affordability is a real issue in the city. People are leaving the city because...
Now, this is Mayor Eric Adams. This is when he had his change of mind and decided to oppose it. They said it was like the last seconds, or the last part of it before the passage. Remember, his inaction was was noted as not being a part of either side. So his inaction on it 30 days before its passage, it's like, no, I'm not even dealing with it. Let's go.
It's just too expensive. If you pass the cost on, think this for a moment, if you pass the cost on to the small property owners, nothing stops, and that law stops them from building it into their rent.
So the bill would be a game changer for apartment hunters, right? And here to tell us more about it is the Brooklyn City Councilman leading the charge, Chi Osei, about this. So good morning to you, Councilman. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
I think this is a bill where so many New Yorkers, if not all people who rent, can feel, because everybody's kind of dealt with this whole broker fee.
Now, in this, he's going to tell you how he relates to the tenants. He's actually been through an experience, and he also says that he's basically, for agents and brokers as well, but is leaning more to the tenant side, which it's understandable. It's part of the bill. It's the main focus on the bill.
The aspect, and it being astronomical with the first month, last month's security deposit, it could be thousands of dollars up front. And that was your experience, right? So talk about your experience and how that kind of parlayed into wanting to do something about it.
Absolutely. So 2 years ago, I was looking for an apartment within my own district in Bed-Stuy, and it was impossible to find one without being forced to pay a broker fee. I would go to various different listings, show up, there would be no broker there, and then when I wanted to sign a lease, I would be ending up having to pay $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 to a broker I never hired or met.
Because you found the listing online.
I found the listing online.
Right. And this is where, a lot of the controversy comes in, because, just because you find a listing on, some of these websites, what have you, there's still a lot that out there that may be expired, stale, old, a lot of fake listings out there, and a lot of bait and switch just to draw you in, right? So you want to do it traditionally on your own, you run into a lot of those things as well. Not to say you're not going to find something that's legitimate, but there's a lot of traps out there for you, that's out there as well. So this is why we mentioned the tools and techniques of a professional would be, be very good to get. You want to make sure that the professional is with you step by step, right? And, you got to do your part as well. There's appointments, That's, when you go to the viewings, got to be there super on time, very punctual, and, make sure all the paperwork is together so we can have a seamless, effortless, process.
Online, either word of mouth from a friend, and so many prospective tenants in New York City are dealing with that. 9 times out of 10, when you're looking for an apartment, you show up, you find it on your own, and then at lease signing, you're paying a fee of 15 to 30% of your annual rent to a broker that your landlord hired.
And this is what you're hoping will put an end to that. What do you say to the mayor then, who says this may backfire because then the landlords may in turn charge you more in rent to make up for paying for that broker fee themselves?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and the mayor is very incorrect on this. 47% of housing for tenants in New York City is rent stabilized housing, so it would be impossible and illegal for landlords to bake the fee into the rent.
Now, he said 40% of the units in the city are rent stabilized. That is true. But that doesn't mean that foul practices don't go on. And this is what, what they called, it may be a black market of units that are totally hidden from that process for the tenants to find it online. They're trying their best, because the landlords want to get as much money out of this as possible. This is an interesting time, and we really got to just breathe, focus, work together, and just try to find something that's going to be mutually agreeable for all parties to be satisfied.
Those cases. In addition to that, rents are set by market forces and what tenants can pay. If your landlord could increase your rent tomorrow, they would have done so yesterday. I actually believe that the passing of this bill would put a downward pressure on rents. It gives tenants more bargaining power, more mobility when it comes to release signing, and it gives them more accessibility when it comes to finding new homes.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about the market value and everything, right? But wouldn't this be built into the market value, right? Because a landlord might say, well, now I got to pay this, however much it may be, say $6,000 broker fee up front. Let me bake that into the rent.
Sure. In the smallest case that happens, many tenants do not want to pay that upfront fee of moving into a new apartment.
Okay.
The average cost of first-time fees for moving into an apartment is over $10,000. Eliminating that cost and splitting it up over 12 or 24 months allows people to move into new apartments. I've heard from people within my district.
There, I think, is an admission that this practice will go on. It's an admission to me. I'm not the concluding voice. I'm not the definitive voice. It just sounds like that. They're like, we'll accept the over the time thing because most, what's going to happen is usually within the rent hikes. So when you get to the second, third, fourth year, you might see that cost that could have been alleviated from the upfront cost. But I get it. The upfront cost for the tenant is a financial burden. It makes it extremely hard just to get in. And it's turning people off. They'll go to other places, even though the same practices are going on in other places. And it's just, let me know what you think. Put it in the comments. Send me your comments and criticisms about this. But it's going into effect June 11th. But there's litigation out, so we'll see.
District, prospective tenants who are single mothers who are dealing with domestic violence, working class families, union members who cannot save multiple paychecks just to move into a new apartment. So splitting that fee in the smallest case, if it's baked into those rents over 12 or 24 months, will allow people to move into more apartments.
Okay, with that, we'll go into one more case that's counter to this, right? And after that, pretty much done. I'm pretty much done now. I think we had enough. Here we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Really? I mean, it's gonna. It's gonna bring a lot of conversations to the table. This is what I like this one right here. The real deal. Let's go into this, and then, you know, end it on a good note.
To 62 apartments on Street Easy. I've toured 21 of them. I've applied to 8 of them, paying $20 8 separate times for 8 different credit checks. And finally, today, I'm now locked into my new apartment. I know that I'm locked in because of this. This is the check for my broker's fee here in New York City. And this is not even a prop or anything. This is like literally the cashier's check for my broker's fee. It's a system that's pretty unique to New York, and it's one that advocates of the F.A.R.E Act hope doesn't exist for much longer. At least, that's the idea. Last week, the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection proposed penalties for breaking the law once it goes into effect on June 14th. If caught charging an illegal fee, both the landlord and the broker would be fined $750 on the first infraction, $1,800 on the second, $2,000 on the third, and so on. It's easy to chalk that up as a loss for real estate and a win for renters, but it might not be that simple. The Pandora's box that gets opened because of this may actually be worse than the current system that we have now, which is really bad. See, the F.A.R.E Act bans the practice where a broker hired by a landlord to advertise a listing can charge new tenants the fee. The law says that a broker who lists an apartment needs to be paid by the person who hired them. The law doesn't actually ban brokers' fees, so if you hire your own broker, you'll still pay them. It just bans the passing on of this fee. This distinction is really important, and it could create a gray market situation. Say there's a 2-bedroom broker's fee apartment.
All right, just wanted you to hear that. Here's a couple of people responding to that. I never understood why the people refuse to pay brokers. They pay lawyers, doctors, literally everyone but brokers should work for free. LOL. Nicole Solar 21 said this is just going to make housing affordability worse. Watch landlords charge more in rent per month because they have to pay the brokers, and there goes all the increases. And lastly, Jason Haber says this is why we've been fighting against the F.A.R.E Act, which would be in effect produce the single largest rent increase in the history of the city, while at the same time dramatically shrinking the on-market supply. What do you think? Send me your comments, your criticisms, your questions, and we'll get to it. Camera stopped, and just want to find out what's on your thoughts about this. Thank you. Keep spotting the sun. Use the keys of communication to open the doors of new opportunity. Take care.